Okay, so we've talked about 3 ways to solve, well, we've talked about 4 ways to solve quadratic equations, but the third way we did, the completing the square, kind of replaced it with quadratic formula. You guys remember quadratic formula from yesterday?
Yeah.
Should have asked you to write it down without looking at it, but see how much of that we could get. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a.
Can you sing a song?
No. Okay. So on this assignment, it's just like choose the best method and solve the equation. So basically, does factoring work? And if it does, use that. And if not, use quadratic formula. That's the main 2 options. Now, the only exception is, and I don't think it's on this assignment, the only exception is if you just have an x squared term with no x term, in this case, you would just get x squared by itself. Square root, if you use the square root trick, remember you have to put plus or minus. But that is not on this assignment. I don't believe. Number 3, I guess. Yeah, okay, there are a couple. We're not actually solving number 3 though, so I didn't really look at that. Okay, number 1. So, what's the easiest way to solve number 1?
Quadratic formula.
Okay, does it factor?
Yes.
Do 2 things multiply into 8 that add up to negative 2?
Yes.
Yeah, 4 and 2. So I would say number 1 is a factoring. Okay, does number 3 factor? No. But it just has an x squared minus 7, so what's probably the easiest way to solve that?
Quadratic formula.
No.
Completing the square.
No.
B. Taking the roots.
It's like the example I just did. You want to get the x squared by itself,
Yeah.
and then take the square root. That's what they mean. That's what they mean by taking the roots. Okay. By the way, the answer I just kind of said at the beginning. The answer to none of these is completing the square. By the way.
None of them is completing the square?
No, because quadratic formula is better than completing the square. So if it doesn't factor, if you can't just take the square root, then it's quadratic formula.
Wait, what even was completing the square?
It's where we divided the b term by 2 and squared it and added that to both sides. We did it on Wednesday. Okay, number 5. Does that factor? Well, if there's a number on the front, it would take a really long time to figure out whether that factors. Do you guys remember we actually did factor a few of those a long time ago?
Yeah, that was not
But it's
hard.
harder when there's a number on the front. So I would say probably on 5, the easiest way is just to do quadratic formula. So 5b. Okay, for number 7, evaluate the discriminant. We haven't talked about what the discriminant is yet. Actually, before we do that, let's see, how much of this can we, let's do the quadratic formula. How much can we say from memory? Negative b
Square root of
plus or minus.
Square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a.
Okay, a lot of times, like if I ask this question on a test, they'll do like this.
It's the whole thing,
Yeah, it's all over 2a.
like in the song.
Yeah. So the more you use it, the easier it is to remember. I know it looks like a big jumbled mess the first time you see it, but there's not that much to it. Okay, this thing under the square root, b squared minus 4ac, they call it the discriminant. Do you guys know what the root word of discriminant is? Discriminate. Okay, discriminate doesn't necessarily mean bad things. Discriminate means to tell the difference between. So, it's often linked with racism because you're not supposed to say black or white, can't do this, can't do this. So, but that actually doesn't mean bad things. It means like to tell the difference between. So, if you're going to the bathroom, you want to discriminate between the boys' bathroom and the girls' bathroom. So you don't go in the wrong one. Yes. So it's not necessarily a negative word, just depends on the context. Anyways, this is called a discriminant because it's going to decide what kind of answers you're going to get. Okay, so for example, yesterday on a couple of questions we did, this came out as 0 under the square root. You guys remember what happened if that came out as 0?
It was one answer.
We only got one answer. So, you would get one rational answer if it comes out as 0. Now, what does rational mean? It's been a while since we talked about it.
It doesn't have like little numbers after it.
Okay, it means,
It doesn't have a decimal.
Yeah.
well, it could be a decimal. It's anything that can be written as a fraction.
It doesn't have repeating, right?
It could be a repeating decimal. Anything that can be written as a fraction. So the only thing that's not rational is like square root of 5 or square root of pi. Those are not rational. But rational kind of means normal. But it could be like -4/3 or 0.73, because 0.73 is like 73/100. Or it could be repeating, because repeating, they always equal fractions. But if it's a infinite non-repeating decimal, that's irrational. So rational just means normal, like a normal fraction or something. Okay, if it came out positive, but it had no, it was not a perfect square. What do I mean by perfect square?
Like
64.
Right, 16, 64, 25, 49, anything that has a square root. Okay, if it didn't come out perfect, this was like 19 and 20 from yesterday. Remember, if it just had a square root in the answer, we just kind of left it alone on 19 and 20. So if it's not a perfect square, it's going to be 2 irrational answers. Irrational means, well, we kind of just talked about it. It's not rational. Irrational means it's like infinite, non-repeating decimal, like square 7. But what if it's positive and it is a perfect square? This is what happened almost every time yesterday. If it does have a square root, what's going to happen?
2 answers.
You're going to get 2 rational, like normal answers. Pretty much everything we did yesterday was this. This was just 19 and 20 from yesterday. This one happened on a couple random questions from yesterday. And what did not happen yesterday?
No real.
Negatives. What happens if you get like a negative under the square root?
It's nothing.
Okay, it's not real. There is something called imaginary, that'd be like an Algebra 2 thing, but for our purposes, if you get a square root under there, or a negative under the square root, we're just going to put not real. So this could actually happen today. It did not happen yesterday. Alright? So we're just going to leave it at that. No real solution. Alright, so those are kind of the 4 options. So you can kind of know what answers you're going to get by just looking at b squared minus 4ac. What's under the radical kind of decides what kind of answers you're going to get. Can I zoom out on this? We'll keep that in view for a while. This might be in a table somewhere in your book. Let me look in your book. It kind of is in a table on the bottom of 507. It's a little bit confusing, but you might be able to sort it out. Okay. Number 7. So it says evaluate the discriminant. So basically, listen. What we're going to be doing is the b squared minus 4ac part. What they are trying to get at is if this comes out as something with the square root, it's a factorable problem. Linux, pay attention. Put your leg down. Okay, if this comes out with a square root, that means it's going to be like normal answers. It could have been factorable, so you could factor it. We're not going to worry too much about that, but we are going to do the discriminant thing. Okay, x squared plus 10x plus 51. Alright, you guys remember this from yesterday? What's my A, B, and C? 1, 10, and 51. Remember, if it was on the right side, you're supposed to move it over to the left and make it opposite. So, what's b squared? 10 squared minus 4 times a times c. So, 100 minus 4 is 96. Okay, it's positive. Does 96 have a square root?
Wait,
What, did I copy the wrong one
wouldn't
down?
C be 51? Yeah, C's 51.
Oh, it's a 20.
Wouldn't the C be 51?
Yeah. I made lots of mistakes. There we go. Okay, so this would be 400 minus 204, which is 196. Does 196 have a square root?
Yes.
Well, if we didn't know, what
14.
just plug it in the calculator. It does.
How did you just know that?
Use the calculator. That's what those are for.
Well,
It's in my binder.
13 is like not too far. So.
Okay, anyways, it does have a square root.
False accusation.
So we're supposed to put 14, but we're also supposed to put, what kind of answers would we get?
Pause.
Oh, no, sorry. We're supposed to put 196, not 14. It's positive, and is it a perfect square?
Yes.
Yes, so it's 2 rational answers, which is option A. You guys see where I got that from?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was positive, and it was a perfect square, because it comes out as 14 square root of 196. So it's option A, 2 rational.
Yeah, you may have to go back to that when we are done.
Okay, number 9. What's my A, B, and C on number 9? 1, negative 6, and 9. So what's b squared going to be in this case?
36.
Minus 4 times a times c. What's 4 times 9?
36.
36 minus 36.
0.
So we're supposed to put 0, comma. What kind of answers do we get when it's a 0?
1.
1 rational, which is option
C.
C.
I like this section.
Number 11. Okay, what's my A on 11? Negative 3. What's my B?
X.
1.
Yeah.
What's my C?
8.
Negative 8.
No,
Positive,
you're wrong.
positive 8, because the negative 8's on the wrong side. So, b squared minus 4 times a times c. It's going to be positive or negative?
Negative. No, positive.
Yeah, a minus and a negative, this will be a positive. So it's, let's see, 12 times 8 is 96, 97.
What is that?
Does 96 have a, is 96 a perfect square?
No.
No.
That's actually nice.
So or sorry, 97. Is 97 a perfect square? Still no. Does it have, what kind of answers is it gonna have? Two irrational. That means it'll have two square root answers.
So B.
So it's B, okay, two irrational answers. Number 13. Okay, that one's not tricky, it's just 2, 5, and 1. On 14, what would the A, B, and C?
1
No,
is C.
okay, 1 is C, yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, very good.
Wow.
What's the A?
It's what number?
14.
25.
Positive.
Yeah, you could do positive 25, positive 10, positive 1. Okay, anyway, 2, 5, and 1 for 13. So b squared minus 4ac, 25 minus 8 is 17. Does 17 have a square root? No, so it's positive, no. So we never got a negative on the odd, so that means a couple of evens will probably be negative. So that would be, doesn't matter if it's like negative 16, it's still not real. So you should get some D answers on the evens. Okay, 15. Solve using the method of your choice. Okay, so if you use quadratic formula every time, I'm not going to say you can't do that. But since some of them can factor, some of them cannot. Okay, I'm just going to do whatever I think is easiest. On 15, is that factor?
No.
What multiplies into 45? 5 and 9, does that add up to 12 somehow? No. What else can go into 45? There's
15. 3. So yes.
3 and 15.
-3.
Right.
Oh.
So because that factors, it will be much faster for me at least to factor. If you're not good at factoring, you could do quadratic formula every time.
That's not fun.
So, yeah, 15 and 3 can add up to 12. If we do positive 15 and negative 3, what x values would make these two factors 0? Negative 15 or 3. That's a lot faster than quadratic formula. Okay, but if it's a tricky factoring problem, for example, number 20. 20 does factor, actually. But it might just be simpler to go ahead and use quadratic formula because that's up to you though. It's up to you. Okay, number 17. Is this going to factor?
No.
Do two things multiply into one that add up to 3?
No.
No. It does not factor. So we have to use quadratic formula, basically. What's the first step? Whether I'm factoring or not, what's my first step supposed to be?
Add 1.
I'm going to add the 1 over to the left. So we want a 0 over on the right. Okay, does not factor, so I'm going to use my A, B, C and plug it in. Sloppy Joe there. Negative B. Oops. Alright. 3 squared minus 4 times A times C. 2 times A. Okay. Here's where all the magic happens. 9 minus 4 is 5. So we got negative 3 plus minus square root of 5 over 2. Can I do anything else to it?
No.
No.
Don't do anything.
I should mention something though.
Oh no.
Let's say that square root simplified partially into this. Can I simplify this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, if they're both divisible by 2, you can do that. Well, what if only one of them was divisible by 2?
Then you go.
No, it doesn't really simplify. So you can only reduce if all the terms on top and bottom reduce.
40.
And I didn't really look at them to see if they reduced or not, so who knows. Number 19, last one. Okay, does that factor? Well, it might not be immediately obvious. They wanted you to use quadratic formulas to see if it factored. So if I did 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times 2.
The what?
If I did the discriminant, does it come out as factorable? Does it have a square root? 49 minus 16 is like 31. So does that have a square root? No. That means that it has a square root answer. It's not factorable. We're going to get that in our answer. So that means it can't have been factorable. So that's what they wanted you to do. Was it 33? 4 times 16, this is 49. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So it's, what's my A, B, and C? 2, negative 7, and 2. So negative B, positive 7. 7 squared. Well, we kind of already did this part. It's 33, so I'm not going to do it again. Over 2 times A. So that's pretty much it. We didn't really talk about this yesterday. If square root of 33 simplifies, you need to do that. What do I mean by simplify?
Like it goes into something.
Of 5
Like,
square root of 10.
If there's a double in it, you need to break it down. But there isn't, so it's an ugly. If you get a negative under the square root, just put no real solution.